Yeah, welcome to Puppet Camp Amsterdam. It's the second time I've been to Amsterdam. The last time is almost 3 or 4 years ago when there has been one of the bigger, was it already also a conference, stuff like that, somewhere nearby, not at this location. Yeah, like promised, I want to talk about the power of Puppet 4. Why am I eager looking forward that Puppet 4 gets released? What is the new stuff that is inside? And some words about me. I'm from Berlin, Germany, so please apologize my hard accent on my English. I'm a Puppet Labs training partner, conducting the official Puppet Labs trainings. I'm contributing to some modules, and yeah, I like automation. I don't like anymore logging into systems, doing stuff manually. I try to automate everything. So what I'm going, there's the overview, and afterwards we have some more details. I want to talk, like Luke already said, the Puppet server, what's new with the Puppet server. I want to talk environments. Ger already did that, explaining some environment stuff. Then there's something new, like what is new language features inside Puppet 4. We want to talk about types. Why do we like types? Why do we want types? We use them already with ugly chaining around for getting proper types. I want to talk about the deprecations that will come, and I want to show you afterwards a summary of the 4 powers of Puppet 4. So, who's already using Puppet version 4? Okay, there is no Puppet version 4 at the moment. It's 3.7 with the future parser enabled. Who's using the future parser on Puppet 3? Already a couple. Who's using it in production of these guys? All of them. No, not all of them, but most of them. That's nice. So who's using Puppet 3 without the future parser enabled? Normally, this should be most of the people, not nowadays. Who's using Puppet, still using Puppet version 2? Only a couple. So most people already use Puppet 3. With Puppet 4, many things will change. Like Luke mentioned, there is now no longer the Puppet Master running on top on Ruby, on Passenger or Unicorn or stuff like that. We now have a Java virtual machine. Oh wow, now we have something completely new. We have a Puppet Master running on Java. We don't know how to deal with closure applications. Who's using PuppetDB? Everybody who's risen his hand already knows how to run a Java application written in Clojure, because PuppetDB is the same approach as the Puppet server. It's a Java virtual machine coded in Clojure. The next thing they've built in is a cool chain called Deprecations. Deprecations allows you to switch on and off certain functionality on the Puppet Master. And we will see with one of the last slides why we want to like Deprecations and what is it good for. The next thing, when you do a monitoring, you want to try get metrics of your Puppet Master. So at the moment, when you deal with Passenger, for example, on Apache, you can check your Apache status page. You can check for the passenger status. You can do the same with JMX on a Java virtual machine, getting information about the state of the Java virtual machine. And with Puppet Enterprise, only Puppet Enterprise, you even get an insight into the functionality of the Puppet Master. What is going good, what is going worse. The next thing which will definitely change is the way how they package the packages. So we have the Puppet server, which is already a package available for installation, Debian package and RPM package. And within the Puppet agent, there's a discussion on the mailing list, and they told the people, hey, we want to change the approach how you have to install a Puppet agent, and we want to provide all-in-one AIO packages. So we will bundle Ruby, all the GAMs, and the Puppet agent, and Factor, maybe C Factor, but at least any kind of version of Factor, and we want to bundle it into one installation only. So you don't have to mess around with which Ruby version is it that they have to install on my system. So this is the same approach Puppet Labs did with the very early releases of Puppet Enterprise, where they said, we will take care on proper Ruby version, proper set of GAMs that are functionally working together. To not make an update available automatically, they said Puppet 4 is a big change. Many new things, many deprecations. So they said, okay, we will stop using the term Puppet as the package name. We will switch to another name, so you won't get updates automatically. Geir already talked about environments, and I want to give a short overview of how we have dealt with environments over the past few years. First, we had the static environments. We had our Puppet conf, and in the brackets we gave an environment name, and afterwards we gave the module path and the manifests. And every developer that came to us and said, hey, I need a testing environment I need a special testing environment. We need to configure the Puppet conf. Hopefully we had that done via Puppet and don't need to do it manually. We had to restart the Apache servers for notifying this change, and then the new environment was available, which is, well, somehow manual work. Like I said, I don't like manual work. So we introduced dynamic environments. Within the Puppet conf, in the master section, only provide a module path and just use the environment variable inside the module path. So if a developer shows up in our desk again and said, hey, I want to have a new environment, we told them, hey, create a new directory structure on the Puppet master, whichever name you like for your environment, and you're fine to go. With latest Puppet 3 versions and within Puppet 4, we have directory-based environments. It means we only give the Puppet master where is the environment path, full stop, nothing else. And on the file system, we have multiple directories in that environment path, and each of the directories is one environment, which has a slight benefit towards the fixed environment path. We can now, for example, provide which config version would we like to see when we do a Puppet run. When you don't modify the config version settings, you will just see the Unix timestamp on when was the catalog compiled. But sometimes, especially when we have multiple masters set up, we want to ensure that we have the same version on all our Puppet masters. We don't want one Puppet master to be out of sync. So you can set a per configuration, per environment configuration. And like in the dynamic environments, they are available immediately on the Puppet master. And you have the great integration into R10K. Like Geir already told you, you have branches within Git. Each branch represents an environment, and you're modifying the files according to the branch. So Puppet 4 and new language features. There's many stuff coming to us. The first thing people were looking for is lambdas. Lambdas is a set of code that does something. And this does something, we have functions. And the function, like in the example beneath, is, for example, the each function. We now have the possibility of iterating over an array inside our Puppet code. So when you normally nowadays have an array, you know, okay, I have to use it in a template, and within the template I have the ERB opening tag, and there I will use the Ruby function on that certain variable, on that array. Which means that Puppet has to know that $A is an array at the moment, and that we have the each function available on that array. And there are many functions. They all deal with arrays and hashes, and how to modify, strip data out of arrays, strip data out of hashes. And you can use them in multiple ways. The first one is the standard way. The way like we've always done that. We have the function name, we have the round braces, and maybe we have a parameter which we will pass on. And now we also have the Ruby way of chaining a type and a function for that type. So we have the dot notation. The next thing that will change, we don't have only ERB templates. ERB templates were confusing for people. Do I have to, the variable, why should I now switch from dollar to an @ sign? I have to use the scope function for getting a variable from another scope. So the guys at Puppet Labs decided, okay, let's make it easier for the people that maintain Puppet code, that write templates, and build a new template engine, the EPP template engine. Don't ask me for the name. My best suggestion is embedded Puppet parser, maybe. You still have the two functions, EPP, it's the same as ERB, inline EPP, the same as inline ERB. And the difference is you don't use the @ variable anymore, you're using the $, and you're using the scope variable like you use it in Puppet. Another thing, multi-line, multi-line content in Puppet was always a disaster to write. It was looking ugly. The Puppet code itself looked fine, and then we had something like a multi-line content. And Puppet adopted stuff which we already know from Shell, the here doc. And they say, okay, give me a marker that defines the end of the text, and afterwards I will just parse that text as is. I have some possibilities of having it nicer looking in the Puppet code. I have the pipe sign which says start the text from this tag on. And there's more. There's the minus sign, which has the same behavior as the ERB engine. Don't print that new line here. We can do variable substitution inside here doc by just putting the marker into double quotes. And we can enable escape characters. Only a few of them, not all of them. And within here doc, we once more have the possibility of checking the type of the here doc. At the moment, there's only one check built in, one syntax check. It's JSON. So if you tell Puppet, okay, this variable is a here doc format until that marker, and everything that comes underneath until the marker is JSON. So again, we have types. Somehow we can act on types. We can check for types. So it seems to be a big issue with all those types. 2 times I already told you. Types, variables have certain functions. An array, I can loop with each function over an array. Now I have data types inside the here doc. So this type stuff seems to be something very, very big. And it's very big, and it's absolutely new in Puppet that we have types available nowadays. Why do we need types? Why do we want types? I hope it's readable, looking like it. So think about you're managing your Puppet code, and you say, oh, I'm configuring SSH via a Puppet module. And one of the guys shows up and says, no, 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 no. That system over there, that should not have run an SSH daemon. Nobody should be able to log in. It's managed by Puppet, full stop. So why should we give access to that system via SSH? Tell them, okay, no problem at all. I'll do a parameterized class and set the default for should I install the server to yes, and you have the possibility when you provide code, you just switch to false, and then that system will no longer have the has the SSH server running. So your colleague starts working his own code. He's declaring the SSH class, and he's setting server to false. Unluckily, maybe it's a junior admin who doesn't know the difference between string and boolean, and he's setting false in quotes, making it a string. So this code will work like that the if server checks whether the server has a content and is not false and is a defined variable. Yes, it has content, it's false, but this relates to true. So we have, again, the SSH server running. And we don't get any error messages at all. Okay, now we start working around a bad habit on putting wrong data into Puppet code by saying, okay, we know about the stdlib, and we know the validate bool function. So we're just validating whether this defaults to a bool. Yes, but server giving a string does not validate to a bool. It still has the SSH server running, so it isn't working at all. You have to do more checks. Okay, now I'm checking that there is not the string, that there is the string false inside. Okay, how many exceptions do I have to get to have it working properly on all systems with any kind of weird data, 1 or 0? And what is it when we come to more complex data? When we have hashes with our users inside, user Tom, user Ben, user Tim. Everybody has a group ID, a home, and a managed home. Yeah, hopefully the guys know how to write the proper data. So on the Ben user, the home directory isn't encoded as a string. But instead managed home is a string and no longer a Boolean value. Tim, even worse, missing the trailing slash for his home directory. So we haven't, at the moment, we have no way checking these data. We just wait for Puppet errors, and then we tell the people providing the data, please fix your data. And this is not the good way. The good way would be something like, let's type our variables. let's say, hey, the variable server has to be a Boolean. And this is now new in Puppet 4, within, or even the future parser with Puppet 3.7. We can provide data types to our attributes. So now we know, okay, this is Boolean. We don't have to mess around with validate bool, is bool, we have made one exception, we may false written in a wrong way and still allow it to work properly. No, we just say no, we're strict now. We're saying this data is a bool. And when we now use the bool value with the wrong way, we get a proper error message from the Puppet master claiming, hey, I expect that to be a bool value. Please, dear user, fix your code, fix your data. So yes, we want types. We were waiting for it, and now we have it. We can even do, maybe not the finest examples of all, yes, everybody is claiming, yeah, create resources much easier, but I want to check for certain stuff. And I can say, okay, I have a hash, I'm reading a hash map somewhere. And I'm using that hash map on doing some stuff. And I say, okay, the group ID should be a string. Maybe it's an integer would be better. The home directory should be a string. But this is not the way how I would like to deal it, because I'm expecting it to check for a certain way how it looks like, so a regular expression. And yes, there's more than only string, integer, and bool inside Puppet. You can check for regular expressions, you can check for patterns, you can check for arrays, you can check for arrays, and this is only a summary of the list that is available. You can combine them to collections. When you say this hash consists of an array with elements of a type of string and the next element an irregular expression. Well, great power leads to great responsibility, like people tend to say. And when there's so much new stuff, Puppet also decided to break with the old stuff. That it's not possible doing just an upgrade, because we're implementing so many new things. Let's use that point on breaking with bad habit, with old bad habit. Let's break old stuff. We will discontinue supporting stuff where we say it's ugly code inside Puppet, it's not best practices anymore. Let's just break with it. And the list is quite long, and this is only a short summary of the list. You will have no longer node inheritance, empty string comparison will be different, which will lead to the fact that maybe 80% of the worldwide modules will discontinue working as expected. Let's dig into the single stuff. So, who's using node inheritance at the moment? Node classification with node inheritance. Okay, I hope at least you're doing it with classes only and you don't provide variables on node level. So in this example, I define a dummy node, a node that isn't available at my whole platform. It's just a dummy node where I say I'm collecting stuff which I would like to have on all of my systems. It's the base module and the security module. This is something I want to have everywhere. And my real nodes, I'm going saying, okay, inherit the behavior, everything that is inside the base node, and add the class web server, for example. So this stops working. Why does it stop working? Puppet decided to go no longer with node inheritance. Like Gare said, roles and profiles. This is the new way how you now define classes, how you do stuff with you only want your real node to have one role only. So you say, okay, my www.server.com should be a web server, should get the class web server. Yeah, then just roles and profiles sound so difficult to many people. In fact, it's only modules. You have a module available in your environment path, and you have a module with the name base node, and you have a module with the name web server, and the web server just includes base node and does stuff which belongs to the web server. So no node inheritance, please switch to roles and profiles. The empty string comparison will change. When you nowadays check for a variable having an empty string, Puppet will say, okay, this is false. But from a pure logical point, this is wrong. An empty variable, an empty string is something, says something. It's not undef and it's not false. It says something. So they decided, okay, let's do it the proper way, how Ruby internally does it. And let's say an empty string results in true and not in false anymore. So when you check for a variable being existent and you expect the variable to have content, not an empty string, this is discontinued. You can't do it that way anymore, just checking the variable. The minimum thing you have to do is at least add a check for and being an empty string. So this is stuff where many modules developers nowadays start adding this code in case that they check for a pure existence of a variable. And variable naming. A couple of months ago, one of the Java developers showed up at my desk because in our review process he did some Puppet code, and I said, no, don't commit that, please. Don't use capital letters on variables. And he came to me and said to me, yeah, but why? When I see it from a node perspective, that variable, I cannot change the content of a variable inside a class. So it's more a constant. And from a coder's perspective, I like contents to be capital letters. So I recognize them immediately, they will never change. I have to explain him, yes, but see it the other way around. The Puppet master compiles the catalog from multiple nodes, and each node gets other content in the variables. So this is a variable, not in the class scope, but on the nodes from when you see it from multiple nodes. And Puppet Labs also said, no, it's a variable, and a variable may not start with a capital letter or with an underscore. So if you see code with variables with capital letters, time for you to work prior you can move on to Puppet 4. The reference syntax changes. So when you do a notify, a require, before, a subscribe, and you want to subscribe on a certain type, in this example it's a class, you write the resource type with capital letters, and then I know people doing a white space and then the opening brace, and some people even intend to use the title of the class or the title of the resource with a capital letter. Both is discontinued, will no longer work. There may be no white space between the title and between the reference and the title of the reference, and the title has to be in small case letters. Hyphens in names. Someone from Camp to Camp around here? No. Okay, they have work to do. Yeah, it's a pity, yeah. No more hyphens in name. We disallow using hyphens in module names, and class names, and in defines. So anywhere on the file structure where we see directory names, where we see file names, we no longer may see a hyphen in the file names, which means no hyphens in modules, no hyphens in classes, no hyphens in defines. So the example, Camp to Camp made a syslog ng module and named it properly according to the package syslog-ng. Yeah, please stop working in that way. Replace it by an underscore. When you replace the module, rename the module, of course, that's the definition of your class. You also have to adopt that definition to all declarations of your class. So, hyphens in name. Has anybody already written .rb files in manifests? So using native Ruby code as a manifest. Of course, you did it, yeah. Okay, there was the possibility once to provide Ruby code in Puppet manifests. The difference was the file ending had to be RB for being a Ruby file. And Puppet was thinking, should we continue offering the possibility of writing Ruby code in manifests? And they said no. The reason is quite funny. It was on the Puppet developers mailing list in, what was it, January 2013. They decided, no, we will not do that anymore. Just for people who have never seen stuff like that. For example, this is the beginning and the ending of a Ruby written manifest, of a manifest written in Ruby. So you say, okay, I'm defining a host class SSH. Now you would say, I'm stuck with manifest with a Puppet DSL, and I would write class SSH. And there's more deprecation. Some deprecations are quite useful for us. The relative resolution of class names. So when you have a class SSH and you have a class server, and inside that class you want to reference another class server, then unluckily Puppet says, okay, I'm in the local scope within the module SSH in the class server. And when I want to now have another class which really is the class, the module server, I had to let Puppet know about that by putting double colons in front of the names. And I said, this is now gone, you don't need that anymore. Who's using import? Most people do that in site-pp, importing some other manifest that are underneath. Import is gone, no longer available. When you do this on site-pp, it's quite easy getting rid of it. Just remove the import, because with the new way of environments, Puppet will parse all files in manifest directory in alphabetically order for you, so you don't have to import them. And some other stuff like mutating arrays, using a search function, matching types that don't match properly. So having an integer and using a regular expression on top of it. Now we have a fully typed system, so it's an integer, it's not a string. Regular expressions can only be used on strings. Which will lead us to what are, from my perspective, the 4 powers of Puppet 4. The first one, like Luke mentioned, performance. We have faster catalog compile times. We have faster file serving, which leads into lower agent runtimes, which means we have fewer load on the master, means we can handle more nodes, means we don't have the need for multiple masters maybe. One master is enough. The next thing, scalability. In case that I need multiple masters, in case that I somehow had nowadays to see, okay, I have the concept of master of masters. The first master I'm setting up is the certificate authority. All other masters are something like sub-masters. They will do the catalog compile and the file serving. And even now it's easy by just using trapper keeper flags to switch on and off certain functionality on a Puppet server. Of course, I have to take care that file serving is done from a proper load balanced system, from the proper HA proxy, for example. But it's easier for me. I install one piece of software and I just configure it. Which options would I like to have switched on and off? The next one, measurability. So I have the JMX in the enterprise and the open source. In the enterprise, I even gain in-depth knowledge on what is the health of my system, my total system. I immediately see, oh, we had a change in the Puppet code, and I immediately see somehow, oh, we have high latency right now. Let's look at the functions and see which function is the time-consuming function. What is the reason? Why do agents now wait up to 5 minutes until they receive their catalog? So this is built in enterprise only, and it's an awesome feature. And the next thing is flexibility. I can now deal with different data types like arrays and hashes natively, directly in the Puppet DSL. I don't have to work around with keys function getting the elements of an hash and afterwards using a define or not accessing all that stuff. I can now work natively with data types in Puppet. Like I mentioned, the upgrade to Puppet 4 will not be an easy update and will not be an automatic update. And I'm very happy that Puppet Labs decided to not make Puppet 4 automatically an upgrade for all people that have installed Puppet. It breaks with old-style Puppet DSL code, so please read the documentation. In case that you're not doing tests at the moment, start doing tests. In-depth tests. You will find old pieces of code maintained, written 2 years ago, unmaintained in the same shape, and it's not working anymore with Puppet 4. So you want to verify that in case you're upgrading, that your platform still works in the way as expected. So information, when you're interested in, okay, how is it that I could deal with? What is it? I want to have more information. First, there's the docs.puppetlabs.com site, where you also will receive for, well, the actual version is 3.7. You can switch over to latest. And you, for example, you get which features are deprecated now within 3.7 with future parser enabled. Then there's Henrik Lindberg's blog, somehow let's say an architect, software architect at Puppet Labs, and he's writing a regular blog where he tells people about what is the new upcoming stuff, how should we work now with new upcoming stuff in Puppet 4. He provides examples. Some of his blog posts are very, very technically, in-depth technically. Some blogs are really nice to read by just seeing, okay, I should use it in that way. And next there is the specification where developers, the Puppet Labs developers, look at, okay, how should I implement that? And the specification is a technical overview on how the new functionality should be there. This is the place where Puppet Labs collects all its armatures, where they say, we want to have a certain functionality, so they build a stable construct, an armature, and let's describe this armature in these Git documents. And please, when you start working on that, and you will see foreign modules from the module forge, stop working on Puppet 4, then I please you write pull request, open file bug reports, or even fix issues if you're the maintainer of that certain Puppet module. So we know that we ensured that in the point when we have Puppet 4 released, that maybe at least not all, but many of the modules continue to work with Puppet 4. Thank you. I suppose we have 10 more minutes left for questions.
Thanks.
Thank you. What's the rationale for disallowing hyphens in names?
Sorry, once more?
What is the rationale for disallowing hyphens in names?
One of the main purposes for that, I assume, is that you have the module forge. And when you upload modules to the module forge, Puppet Labs enforces its user to provide a username and a module name. And the separator between the username and the module name is the hyphen. So to not get confused by having something like syslog -ng, is syslog the user and ng the module name, or so to have a better understanding on, is it a module from the module forge which I want to download where I have user minus module name, or is it a real module?
I think
thanks. I really like the ideas of what's coming in Puppet 4, but I also use quite a lot of modules from the Forge. So is there any way to check before I even upgrade, is there going to be anything on the Forge that says, well, these modules are not compatible?
I suppose that there was an upgrade on RSpec Puppet working with the future parser enabled. So I would suggest check for RSpec Puppet, check for Puppet Lint, the tools from Rodjek on GitHub, and check whether there's already for Puppet 3.7 and future parser, because Puppet 3.7 and future parser will maybe 90% be of what is Puppet 4. So if you even nowadays with Puppet 3.7 and the future parser enabled and the RSpec test properly, you might already get an overview of what is working and what is not working.
Okay, thanks.
And I think we've had a question right here that we've sped past.
I just want to know the projected release date for...
The release date? You should ask Puppet Labs, not me. I'm not Puppet Labs. Luke maybe would be one of the proper people to ask for a release date. Like he mentioned, it will come. Last year at PuppetConf, they, not really announced it, but we tried to make a Christmas present. But they hadn't done a Christmas present so far. Maybe it's an Easter egg. We will see.
You want the microphone? Yeah.
Is it possible to create code which will be compatible with the future parser and the old one simultaneously?
Like the examples I've shown, yes. And the type system is optional.
Right.
It will break Puppet 3 and work on Puppet 4, but it's optional. So if you omit the type system, you still have working code on Puppet 4.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. So, this way.
Related to that question, are you aware of any ways for module maintainers to maintain code for Puppet 4 and Puppet 3? Because that's going to be a problem. Like the type system, for instance, you want to provide it and the EPP stuff, but it won't work on Puppet 3, so it's kind of a hard switchover.
So for module maintainers, I suggest the first thing they're doing is getting rid of the deprecations. So the existing Puppet code is working on Puppet 3 and Puppet 4. The next thing would be a new release with a new module file where they say, okay, this is only working on Puppet 4, and then add the type system on top of it, because the type system is not working with Puppet 3.
But there's going to have to be a hard switchover of this now no longer supports.
It has to be a hard switch, and somehow people should have the possibility, from my perspective, my idea now, when you have a Puppet 3 system and you're doing a Puppet module install, you should receive the Puppet 3 version compatible module. When you have a Puppet 4 installation and you're doing Puppet module install, you should receive a Puppet 4 compatible module, which means that you somehow have, of course, two different versions of the same module which you have to maintain, at least for a certain period of days, months, years. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any questions up that way? We haven't gotten to the sky yet.
I was wondering how stable the specification of the future parser is now. Last time I looked, it was a while ago, and there's a lot of stuff that was changing very often. So is it a good idea to now start implementing stuff with the future parser, or should we wait just a little bit longer to get the final spec?
So the future parser is Puppet 3.7, and what Puppet Labs always said, the future parser is an experimental state. We may change names, and they did change names on function. I don't know which function it was, but one of the functions where you work on arrays, they said, no, it's not a good name, let's use another name. I expect, since they want to release in hopefully a couple of weeks, I expect that when you have an actual 3.7, what is it, 3.7.2 I suppose, with future parser enabled, and you start coding on that basis, that it will be fully functional on Puppet 4. But don't hit me for it. Yeah, we still have time. We still have time.
We're good.
Will version 3 agent be fully compatible with the version 4 server?
That's an interesting question. I assume as long as you have Puppet code on your Puppet 4 master, there should be no issues. So when the Puppet master can compile the catalog, the agent, I haven't tested this, nice idea. Testing it with, what is the way testing it? Having a Puppet 3 Puppet server with future parser enabled and run a Puppet 3 agent without future, so it has no future parser, it's on the master only. But I hope they will make that compatible, otherwise it would be a nightmare.
Is it necessary to upgrade to 3.7 first before moving to 4?
I would suggest to at least take the minor versions all with me. So when I'm actually running on 3.4, I would first go to 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and then upgrade to 4. Yes, I always recommend doing upgrades in that way. You can omit bug versions, yes, so the last digit is still fine, but at least you should upgrade the minor versions.
Okay. Thank you.
Where they say that it's not really a recommended upgrade from 3.7 to 4, where it's better to bring up a 4 Puppet master and move your agents over.
Okay, just for everybody else to hear, there was a discussion on the mailing list whether it's okay upgrading the Puppet master and then upgrading the agents, and where the discussion led to the point, spin up a new Puppet master with Puppet version 4 and migrate your agents one after the other to the new Puppet server.
There?
All questions answered? People have work to do?
Okay, in that case, thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you.